In this video, we're going to start our notes for Table R, which is called the functional group table. So functional groups are exactly what they say. They change the function of the molecule quite a bit, so much so that we even change the name depending on the functional group. So the way you're going to do this, luckily you don't have to memorize anything, but what you do have to be able to do is go to Table R and look at how they named something and then modify the name to name something that is very similar but not exactly the same. So let's look at Table R. So in Table R, my notes, what I did was I used every example of Table R. So the very first problem is the Table R problem. So on Table R, they give you this condensed formula and they name it 2-chloropropane. So we need to figure out why they named it that and then how to use that information to name these two problems, which are very similar but not the exact same thing. So the first thing you've got to do is draw it out. So this one is going to look like this. I'm not going to draw the H's in anymore for these types of problems. It's going to take a little bit too long. So this one is called 2-chloropropane. Let's number it. It does not matter if you number it right to left or left to right, because either way, the chlorine's on carbon 2. So the numbering system doesn't really make a difference. And let's figure it out. So what they did was 3 carbons in a row. If it was just this, if I just cover up that, it would be called propane. They then threw 2-chloro in front of it because there was a chlorine on carbon 2. That's it. And if you look at your names, they tell you fluorine, we're going to call it fluoro, chlorine, chloro, bromine, bromo, I for iodo, right? Iodine. So this one, we're just going to call it, notice I'm going to number it this way because the fluorine is what I want. And it's closer to the right side, so I'm going to number it from the right. That way it's on carbon 2. Whereas if I numbered it from the other side, it would be on carbon 3, and I want the lowest possible number. So this thing is going to be called 2-fluoro. Butane, because it's 4 carbons in a row instead of 3. It's that simple. For this, and then condensed, it would be CH3, CH2, CHF, CH3. And I condensed it the same way they condensed the Cl here in the first problem. For the last one, there are 2 groups. There's an F and there's a Cl. So we're going to call it, and again, how we number it doesn't matter because they both happen to be on the middle one. So if I numbered it this way, great. If I number it the other way, it's 2 either way. So this is going to be called 2 2-chloro, 2-fluoropropane. Condensed, it's going to be looking like this. Now, technically, I don't care if you put the F first or the Cl second. I think since C comes before F alphabetically, then the Cl comes first and the F comes second. I'm not even 100% sure on that myself. And then for these, it's definitely alphabetical in terms of the name chloro and fluoro. If you wrote them 2-fluoro, 2-chloro, I wouldn't take any points off, and I don't think anybody else would either for that matter. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. And again, here's the rules right here, but I got these rules from examining the name. So let's do the next one. What else did I want to mention about these guys? Oh, maybe you've heard of this. It's called a CFC. They're bad for the environment. They were these compounds that we banned back in, I guess, in the 90s and the 2000s. They were responsible for putting that hole in the ozone layer. And so, which is actually starting to fix itself. But by banning these CFCs, we fixed it, right? But CFC actually stands for chlorofluorocarbon. It's these types of molecules. Obviously, we don't really use them too much anymore. in commercial use. They are used in labs for different things, but they're not really used on an industrial scale anymore. All right, alcohols. So here's what they give you on table R. So you're going to look at table R and say, all right, alcohol. This tells me the general formula. This tells me the functional group. So by looking at this, what it's saying is, okay, it's an OH stuck on to an R, R being the carbon. So it's an alcohol group is just an OH that takes the place or that sticks onto a carbon the same way a hydrogen would stick onto a carbon. If we look at the general formula for the halides, they use X because X could be FCl, Br, or I, but it's the same idea. It's a halogen stuck onto a carbon in place of a hydrogen. That's essentially what's happening. So they call it 1-propanol, right? So it would be, if it was just 3 carbons in a row, all single bonds, we would call it propane. They put a 1 on it and then called it an OL because on carbon, well, I guess I'll draw it out for carbon 1. It's going to look like this. On carbon 1, they put an OH group on it. Okay, that's where the name came from. So all you're going to do with these is you're going to drop the E off the alkane name. That's the standard rule for all of table R. You take the alkane name and drop the E off, or you drop part of it. Add OL, I figured that out on table R. I figured out that's what they did. And then you number the OH if necessary. The reason it's necessary is because there's 1-propanol. The OH could be on carbon 2, and then it would be called 2-propanol. There's no such thing as 3-propanol because 3 would just be 1 if I numbered it in the reverse direction. But there is such a thing as 1 and 2. So since 1 and 2 are different, that gets a number. Let's look at the next one. The next one would actually just be called 2-propanol. It's 3 carbons in a row. The OH is on carbon 2. Condensed, it would look like this. Done. And then the last one is just called ethanol, no number. So I want you to think about it for a second and tell me why there's no number. So no number really means that there's no second version. So if I call this carbon 1, then it's 1-ethanol. If I put it on this side, then I would just call this one carbon 1. So then there's no carbon 2. There's no such thing as 2-ethanol. It doesn't exist because I'm going to number either one of these carbons carbon 1 no matter what side the OH is on. So since there's no second version, it doesn't get a number. Condensed looks like this. I'm going to break this video up into several smaller clips so that I do each page separately to make it a little bit easier to follow along with.